Ah, the Indiana Pacers. Do it again, ladies and gentlemen. They lose 113-109 to the Greensboro Swarm. The Charlotte Hornets on the second game of a back-to-back for the Hornets after they just lost in Cleveland. The Pacers, back home after their four-game road trip, lay an absolute egg, getting embarrassed on their home floor once again, 113-109. The Pacers had the worst loss of the season tonight. Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam failed to reach double digits as they both finished the game with 9 stinking points. And the Pacers now fall to 10 and 15. Here to talk to me and talk with me about this awful, awful basketball team. And if you're still listening at this point, thank you very much. Michael J. Facci. Facci, what's up, man? How you doing?
I've seen better days. Part of me wishes that I wasn't here to talk about this loss, but
Were you at the
here's the
game
thing.
tonight for some reason?
No, no, not this one. Can't take the
Okay.
blame. You
Okay.
can't point the finger here. But here's the thing. You could make an argument that the 20-point loss earlier in the season to Charlotte, maybe that was the worst loss in the season. I'm going to make the argument this one was worse. I think this is the new rock bottom for the Indiana Pacers, and I'll tell you why. Look, you're home. Okay, Indiana plays much better at home compared to the road. Great. You're not on a back-to-back. Charlotte was. Let's look at who Charlotte was missing. They're missing four players: LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Trey Mann, and Grant Williams. Those four players
And
account,
Mark Williams, starting
yes,
center.
and Mark Williams. So the first four that I mentioned account for 62 points per game. That's not even accounting for Mark Williams. There is no excuse that could possibly be made for the type of performance that we saw returning at home in a game that you needed to have.
I will say this because I do know that sometimes on our YouTube videos we get opposing teams fans watching our episodes to kind of see like what we're saying about their team. I will say this about the Hornets: they played hard tonight
They did.
and they gave a lot of effort, especially for being on the second night of a back-to-back, like you mentioned. I thought we saw some really good things from some different players there. Brandon Miller, we have liked him since he's been a draft
Yes.
prospect. Like, this is a special player that I think, constantly is going to dominate the Pacers for years to come until they address their small forward position, if they ever do that, because they haven't done that yet. So I personally just think, you know, Isaiah Wong, a former two-way player with the Pacers last year, was on the floor for the Hornets in the closing minutes.
Looking good too. Best game
He tied
visible.
his career high, which, it's his second year in the league. 9 points. He matched Halliburton and Siakam for total points in the game tonight. It's just absolutely embarrassing that the Pacers struggled so bad offensively. And and if you look at what Charlotte did, I'm not sure what the numbers are here specifically, but I'm sure you can look them up for me. The
I got him.
turnover battle. Charlotte turned the ball over
Like four times.
how many times?
24
And how many
times.
did the Pacers turn it over?
The Pacers had 17 turnovers in this game.
Okay, so they had 7 more turnovers than you, and you couldn't take advantage of it. That's bad. That's awful. And I looked at Derek Kramer on Media Row at the beginning of the game. When the Pacers lost a tip and the Miles Turner missed his first 3 shots, I said, "Oh no, they're going to lose this game tonight."
They
You
were
just
down
had a
9
feeling.
nothing to start the game. 9-0 to start the game. They missed their first six shots. And yeah, I had the same feeling you went. I went, "Ah, come on." And what makes things even worse is I looked into coming into this game, the Pacers were favored by like 11 and a half points against Charlotte. And I looked at that and I said, that'll never happen. Us beat a team by double digits right now. We're lucky to just get a win, period. And this was a game that Indiana, truthfully, was never a threat. There was about, you could have blinked and missed the 2 point lead that they had at one point in the third quarter because that was it.
Yeah, that's the only lead they had the whole game was a 2 point lead. I think there was 12 lead changes overall in the game, but I think what was more disappointing to me was the fact that we actually saw some version of last year's team in Friday night's victory over Chicago. Rick Carlisle had said we had a really good shoot around talking about spacing and blah, 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 all this stuff. Everybody looked like they were playing a lot more connected offensively. Would they score 132 points in that game against Chicago? So you're thinking, okay, maybe things are starting to click. And I came into this game against Charlotte. I literally told myself last victory against Chicago was nothing to get excited about unless they play the same way tonight against the Hornets, and that can maybe be a direction of like, okay, things are turning around. This is the turning point of the season, right? They got two good wins. They played Pacers basketball. Now they got 4 days off to practice before their game Friday night in Philadelphia. And what do? They do the complete opposite. They revert back to how they've been playing all season long. Awful consistency and really just your star players once again fail to show up. TJ McConnell has a career high 30 points off the bench. Jarris Walker, 15 points on 6 of 7 shooting off the bench. And you lose that game by 4 points? That's inexcusable. And I don't have any answers for what's going on. Obviously, if I did, the Pacers would have those same answers and be able to fix it. But the thing with me is Halliburton, yeah, I mean, McConnell talked about it. They defended him differently, but he said also every team's doing that now. So you've got Nimhard back and Siakam, who was stopping him? He had 9 points. What is going on? I mean, the lack of consistency offensively and getting the ball moving has been utterly atrocious. And I just think that the fact that Rick Carlisle has to say, squeeze the ball with two hands. I don't know how many times I saw Rick Carlisle doing this motion, if you're watching on YouTube, doing this motion during the game, looking at Andrew Nimhard, just grab the ball with two hands. Like it's, and he said it after the game, we're losing the game on the margins. It's all the small little things the Pacers aren't doing well. And when they do them, they look better. But like this team continues to play awful and it's becoming, kind of their MO. It's become who they are now.
It has, because here the thing is, I was more surprised that they beat Chicago like they did compared to losing this game, because now we've actually just looked at the schedule and every opponent feels like, well, oh wait, I don't know. That could be a tough one, no matter who's out. And that's how it was tonight. That should have never happened. There was a scenario in the second quarter where Indiana shot 64% from the field. Awesome. They let Charlotte shoot, I think it was 66% from the field in the second quarter. It's like they couldn't get any of the key loose balls or the key stops that they needed down the stretch. It just felt like anytime Indiana was able to, cut it to two or cut it to four or anything like that late, they couldn't get the pivotal stop. You touched on TJ McConnell. McConnell in what's going to be, the worst loss of the season. McConnell deserves all the credit. He played awesome. 19 shots he gets up and he makes 14 of them. I felt like the heart, the hustle, everything like that
14 of
was there.
16 from two, Facci. 14 of 16 from 2 point.
Even more impressive. Even more impressive. 14 of 16. A lot of those is straight up getting into the paint. Like as, close to the rim as humanly possible. And then you look on the other side, Tyrese Halliburton at halftime had 2 shot attempts. He had 2 shot attempts. He was 0 for 2. It's just it can't continue like this. It just can't go on. I don't understand now. You look at the starters. You mentioned it. Benedict Mathurin led all starters with 11 points
On what shooting?
on 4 of 11 shooting. I
Yeah.
mean, he was another guy who had 2 shots at halftime. It's like, how are these guys not getting shots up by halftime? You want to say maybe the first quarter, 2 shots, sure, whatever. But by halftime, you've already taken yourself out of the game. The crazy thing, at halftime, it was a 1 point game. It was 63 to 62. So
Yeah.
I felt like, despite the poor play from the starters, the bench carried them. They had 39 points in the first half. That was the most that the Pacers have had in the first half all season off the bench. And we wasted an incredible bench performance, 60 points off the bench, and it meant nothing in a loss to a depleted Charlotte team.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought, okay, it's a 1 point game going into halftime. Pacers probably will turn this around. First bucket of the second half, Siakam hits a jumper. I'm like, okay, they're gonna get things rolling, and they don't, and they don't, and it's like the disconnect between that group has just been off since the preseason, and we've seen flashes of them playing better, but there hasn't been a lot of you know continuity, I guess you could say, in terms of like the way they've been playing well. Like they don't ever carry anything over from one game to the
Never.
next. Whether it's a great game here, we can't carry that momentum over to the next game. It's almost like they win the game against the Bulls. They're like, oh, we finally got the monkey off our back. We got that win that we needed. Now everything is going to be fine. And they think they can just go through the motions. I felt like this was one of the most boring games to watch that I've seen in a very long time. I mean, I've been getting texts, I've been getting tweets and
Me too.
replies saying, I'm done with this team. I'm tired of watching them. They're not fun to watch. And honestly, this is the best week to feel that way because they don't play again until Friday. So we all desperately get the break that we need. I literally, Facci, I'm not going to lie, I'm at the game watching it, but on my phone, I had NFL Network pulled up watching them give highlights of the live football games that were going on because that was more entertaining to me. I mean, I'm sorry, but like the product that this team is putting on the floor on a night to night basis is absolutely embarrassing. And there is no such thing as Pacers pride anymore. This team is looking like a ship without a sail. They have no idea what direction they're going, and they're going whichever way the wind blows. And it's ridiculous that this team last year, and I put a tweet out. I said, give me 3 words or less to describe, how this season's going, or how you feel the season's going. And basically, what I was getting back was the haters were right. We're frauds. Last year's season was, a flash in the pan. It was fraudulent. Can't count on this team to be anything. And I know we're at a low moment now, but that's what it feels like. This feels like a worse version of what the Atlanta Hawks were 3 years ago.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when you're talking about, how you had NFL Network pulled up, I couldn't give the Pacers the main TV tonight. I couldn't. I had Red Zone on the main TV. I had Pacers on the laptop because I went, hey, you know what? At least there's a couple of games back and forth that they're switching to, and this is entertaining. I'm watching the Pacers stuck in the mud in this game. And it's like you talked about it. They don't have a game until Friday. To me, that makes it seem like they looked at the schedule and said, "Man, if we could just get past Charlotte, like we're gonna have a couple days off." And it's like it can't always be that type of mindset. And I'm tired of making excuses for this team. I had to drive an hour and a half in traffic and everything to get to that game against the Brooklyn Nets, where at one point they were down 20 points while I'm there. And I paid for the ticket. I'm at the game, long drive. I know I got a long drive after me. And I'm just like, what is going on? Here I am trying to justify it. Well, they did play last night, so they're probably a little tired. No, that can't happen. You're getting paid big time money, some max contracts. If you can't play consistently 2 nights in a row, it's a problem. If you have a night off, in between the Chicago win now, you're not ready to play a depleted Hornets team that 2 of their 7 wins now is against us.
Yeah.
2 of their 7 wins is against us. One of them was a 20-point blowout, and one of them they beat us tonight. How do we make the argument to say that we're even better than Charlotte if they beat us twice? To me, that just sounds like we're being biased if we're saying that we're
Yeah.
better than them. Our record might be better, but they've shown when push comes to shove against us, they've been the better team.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what you said because you said you're trying to make the excuse of like, oh, they just played the night before. Okay, let's just put it in perspective. If that were to happen occasionally throughout the season, you can make that excuse. The
Sure.
problem is that happens every single time they do this. So it's not like it's a one-time thing where you're just like, well, they just had a bad night. They've had bad nights
All the time, every
all
week.
the time. They've played basketball worse and bad basketball more than they've played
Yes,
good
correct.
basketball. They're 10 and 15, which means they've won 40% of their games. I would say for probably close to 25% or 30% of those 40 games, they didn't look good when they won. They look good against Dallas. They look good against Boston. They look good against Orlando. And they look good probably against Chicago. But then again, Chicago isn't the greatest team. So those are your 4 key victories you feel good about. The other ones, you beat Miami on the second night of a series where you just played them like you should win that game, especially knowing like they had to stay in Indiana for that weekend. I'm just trying to think of other games that they've won. Like that whole entire 3 game winning streak at home was not impressive to me when they ended up barely beating the depleted Pelicans, right?
Yeah.
And then you talk about the Portland Trailblazers who were without guys. And I'm trying to remember the other team that they beat. Was it the Wizards? The Wizards are
Knicks.
terrible, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
just beat the
They could win
Nuggets.
against the Knicks. Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean, some of these teams, yeah, you mentioned it. If they had lost to the Wizards at that point, they're essentially, almost collecting them all, losing all the bad teams in the league. But I feel like, the same type of excuse that we made for, oh, well, they were on a back-to-back against Brooklyn in that situation. You mentioned it to start this episode. Charlotte was on a back-to-back. They got it done without a bunch of guys. We had made the excuses before saying, well, this team's without a few of their best defenders. Okay. But like LaMelo Ball is averaging 31 points per game.
it's not even out there.
He's not even out there and they won. So what excuses do we really have at home having, this time around a Miles Turner and an Andrew Nemhard? Like, we're not at full strength, but at the same point, like this is the type of Charlotte team that you have to beat because you simply are just better than of what you're putting out there, on paper is just so far superior than what Charlotte has. And yeah, to me, this is the rock bottom of the season. And the sad thing is we've said that before. And that's what makes it even more scarier that it's getting worse.
Yeah, I mean the fact that it continues to get worse, it's like you think there's coming this point where they're just going to turn things around, and it feels like okay, if I just if I hold it out for a couple more weeks, they'll turn this thing around, they'll get this ship going in the right direction. But it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like they're constantly just like they got a leak in the boat. I'm
Just got
sorry
to
for all
hope
the
for
boat
the bell.
analogies tonight, but that's what it feels like. They've got a leak in the boat and the water's just slowly seeping in and they're just sinking more and more and more and they know there's a hole there in the boat to fix, but they don't know how to fix it. And I'm telling you, fans, every excuse that you want to give for, Carlisle's poor coaching and the players is that like you're right. Everything you want to put the blame on, I think it's all right in terms of like your frustrations. I think that there is issues with the coaching staff. I do think there's issues with the personnel on the roster. I think there's
Yep.
issues with the leadership. I think that this is a collective group of players that when things are going right, they've got good vibes. The fact that one of the youngest players on their roster, Jarris Walker, was put out on the podium tonight to talk about his game instead of Tyrese Halliburton, who usually has to answer all the tough questions, he was pretty authentic tonight, and I actually like what he had to say because he basically just said like when the high highs are high, everyone's happy, but when things start going bad, we just sulk. We start to like have negative energy, and I think part of the reason why Carlisle has constantly said we just got to keep our energy. We got to be positive. We got to be positive, and I hate hearing it after a while as a fan. But if you're hearing Jarris say that, obviously the players don't respond at all to negativity. And so I don't know what kind of kick in the butt they need to turn this ship around. But the fact that Jarris Walker's out there, like, basically identifying the issue that this team has when things get low and they can't seem to get out of their own head mentally, that to me speaks bigger problems to the leadership on this team. And you want to talk about second out of a back to back, okay? With this group, this is a young Pacers team for the most part. They've got some veteran guys, but it was their veteran TJ McConnell, one of the older players on this roster, that was leading the charge. Your young guys were nowhere to be found. And I know they weren't on the second night of a back to back, but the fact that he has the energy to play this enthusiastic for as many minutes as he does, and your star players, Siakam and Halliburton, can't match that, that's problematic to me.
It really is. And, we've gone back and forth at times to be like, okay, hey, McConnell, he played so good last year. Do they bring him back? What do they do with this? Of course, they brought him back and James Johnson. As bad as things are right now, what would this team look like without those vets? Because if it looks bad now, it just feels like who would actually step up and keep people in line. And right now, I'm at this point where I feel like you need to hear of something. We heard like the 76ers, it didn't work, but when they had that players only meeting, like it feels like Indiana has to have a serious players only meeting, something where they are truly challenging each other to be great. Because right now, what we're seeing, it's just I feel like they're tuning out the coaching staff. I really do. I feel like, yeah, of course they're saying the right things in the media. Oh, we got to be better than this and all of that stuff, but it's not translating on the court. Something has to happen. And I would like to at least hear that I want this team to almost be, I don't want to say at a breaking point, but like at a point where they all like, hold each other accountable in a way that's like, this cannot be accepted. You have a couple days off before you face Philly. This is your time to mentally dig deep. But how many cliche statements are we going to say of look in the mirror, dig deep, hold each other accountable? All these sayings, we've said it now for 2 months. Nothing's worked.
No, it's not. And just to get back to this game, we were talking after the game. I want to give Wheat Hotchkiss, the credit for pointing this out. I mean, if you were looking at a boxer, you could figure it out yourself. But he is the one that pointed out, and I said, "Oh my God, that's embarrassing." Will you go ahead and read what the rebounding total was for the Pacers starting center?
Thought that's what you were going there. So Miles Turner had one rebound in this entire game.
Okay, stop right there. One rebound. What did Nick Richards have for the
14.
Charlotte Hornets? What was that?
14 rebounds. He had 14 rebounds. it's this is at a point where collectively, Charlotte out rebounded Indiana 45 to 29. Miles Turner having one rebound is something where, I don't want to get so dramatic about it, but it's like the ball could bounce off in any direction, and anyone, it feels like, could potentially get one rebound in a fluke way. This is
Yeah.
your starting center, your near 7 footer in a contract year. And rebounding has been something that you, me, the fan base, everyone has got on him before to say Turner needs to be a more consistent rebounder. I even said what it was before that when Turner had like above 7 rebounds. I think it was like 8 or 9 rebounds. The Pacers' record was great this year. When it was
Yeah.
below that, the Pacers' record was horrific. And I had a ton of people say things like, well, of course you could always find stats that skew certain things in certain ways. I'm sorry, but you look at a game like this, Indiana needed to get one or two more key rebounds at certain times to be able to tie the game, to be able to push ahead, and they never could. And I don't want to say it starts with Miles, but one rebound in any game is unacceptable.
How many minutes did Nick Richards play tonight?
Nick Richards played 25 minutes,
Okay. So 14 rebounds in 25 minutes. Miles Turner played how many minutes?
21 minutes, which is low
Okay.
for him, but still, it's no excuse for one rebound.
He got in early foul trouble in the first quarter after he took about 6 shots in a row before he finally hit a three-pointer and about lost his mind in front of the bench cheering like he just won the lottery because he finally made a basket.
Yep.
Um, maybe he should quit trying to dunk everything when he doesn't really have that in him anymore. He can do it occasionally, but like that's one of the things he constantly tries to do is get these highlight dunks. Hey, just make an easy two and get yourself going. It's really not that hard. I understand you want to play with force, whatever, but like that to me is like not gonna make me excited if I see you have a nice dunk. So you can post it on your social media later. Like that's fine. Like, okay, cool, great photo, right? Awesome stuff. But like, okay, you missed it. Now you missed two little bunnies right around the rim. You got some threes in there, you get in foul trouble, and then you come right back into the game in the second quarter. And as Matherin's about to drive on the left side, your help defender, you pull him and keep him from helping Matherin unnecessarily and you get your third foul and you have to go to the bench. And the Pacers, they don't bring on Moses Brown. They want
Nope.
nothing to do with Moses. Moses is making bank every day, sitting there doing nothing. I watched Moses Brown in warmups today, and there's a reason why he's not playing. I mean, this guy shoots his free throws with one hand. He probably missed about 15 little bunnies during warmups with nobody guarding him. I'm thinking to myself, this guy is not good. But he's big.
He
But
is
I
big.
mean, I'm just telling you from what I saw in warmups that nobody else saw because there's hardly anybody else in there. But it was just to my when I'm seeing it, I'm like, obviously Carla doesn't trust him. Like they put Enrique Freeman in the game, right? I mean, and that's where the Pacers are at right now. It's not that it's a, oh, we don't have the guys to back them up. It's like your guys that are stars are just making dumb decisions. I'm not even saying Turner's a star. This is a veteran starter. Like this
Yep.
is a guy that is capable of doing things. But what we saw in this game tonight was just absolutely unacceptable from a guy that's been in the league for 10 years. I mean, just ridiculous to me. Like the way that he just kind of took himself out of the game, and the Pacers couldn't go to him late because I don't know if you notice this or not, but like the Hornets went small against him. They're putting like Cody Martin on him or somebody else on him, and he couldn't take advantage of anybody that was 6'6" or under in the post. And he couldn't even move these guys, with his back to the basket. He just turn around and shoot over them and hit the front of the rim. It's just like when you can't go to your center down low and get an easy basket when he's got that big of a mismatch, that just screams to me like this is this is a problem.
It is a problem, and I'm very worried. And I know it's like the another problem is people have a lot of emotions and ties to Miles Turner, and rightfully so. But like, I just have not seen really more than 2 or 3 instances this season where it's like this is absolutely someone that Indiana needs to push the chips in forward to bring back. Look, there's a lot to like, but there's a lot that you also have to be realistic about. And there's certain games where Turner is just a ghost, and tonight was one of them. And it just it can't happen because Turner should have been, someone that could have really helped Indiana in this game. You
He
and I
had 10
talked
points. He
about
had 10 points, which was
good for the
better than what
starters, I guess. Yeah,
better than Siakam or Halliburton, which we already got on their case. But anyway,
exactly. But we talked about when the Pacers were looking to upgrade at center, and I think you brought up Nick Richards, and I was like, I just don't think that's someone that they want to part with because they like him. He's a good backup center in this league, and Tonight, Nick Richards definitely got the better of Miles Turner, and that's just something that should not be happening for someone who wants to command, 25 to 30 million dollars in free agency and thinks of himself as, an all top all defensive player or, wants to be an all-star in this league, anything of that sort. It's like it starts with consistency, and I feel like that's something that still plagues Turner. I don't know what it is this year, but it felt like in his last contract year, he was playing the best basketball of his career. That has not been the case this year. It has not. No one can argue that it has been.
Yeah, I mean, if Miles Turner played as good as he thought he was, he'd be an all-star every night.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we talked about it when he plays good? Like he really talks his talk. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the best centers in the league. It's like, well, then
Heck
you
of a
have games
player.
like tonight where you have one rebound. You play 21 minutes because you put yourself in such a spot the team can't trust you to go out there because you're getting stupid fouls. It's like the greats and the all stars. They don't have this many games like this, and this is a reoccurring thing with Turner. He has more of the rarity games where he's like, oh, 30 points this game and 10 rebounds, and no, this is monster Miles, and then too many games where he's just kind of like average or below average, and you justify the great games that he has for why the Pacers want to keep him with overlooking how average he is on a normal basis. And so I think that's a big factor for me with this team. Benedict Mathern, I mean, another bad game offensively for him. He had 11 points on 11 shots, like you said, and defensively, like it wasn't just a Matherin problem. Nobody could guard in this game, but like I don't know how many times I just saw people blow by people in this game. I mean, the defense was putrid, and I mean we've gotten on Halliburton. I mean, it's the same old stuff with him. Like every time he is bad, and I think Siakam at this point, he's starting to look like he's tired, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is a
I,
guy that
I, I
looks like he's
definitely
going
agree
through the
there.
motions.
Yeah, and this is some of the worries. It's a whole topic for another day, but it's like, making the trade for Siakam last year was what Indiana needed to be able to take a step forward, but we did talk about it. A big thing about that was his age, that he is a little bit older than the rest of, this group, and I think that for most of the season, he has brought it consistently. The last couple games, he's definitely taken a little bit of a dip. Like, for instance, in November, he averaged 21 points per game, 55% shooting, 41% from three. This month, early on, but he's averaging 16.3 points per game, 43% shooting, about 39% from three, and he's averaging about 5 rebounds. So the numbers are definitely down across the board. I feel like, he had a solid performance against Chicago in a win, but I feel like so did everybody. And then other than that, I mean, you're talking about 9 points against Charlotte, 14 against Brooklyn. Toronto, we talked about the struggles in that. That might have been arguably maybe his worst game of the
Yeah.
season. And then 17 points against Memphis in that game where everything just fell apart in the second half. So he
Yeah.
definitely does look tired. I'm curious to see how he does respond with a couple days off against Philly. But it's year one of the max, and I'm happy this deal ended up being a 4-year deal, not a 5-year deal. Put it
Yeah,
that
I
way.
mean, I think that the Pacers were never going to go 5 years with him specifically
Would have
just
been great.
because of the age, but I understand why they gave it to him. Like, he was awesome in the playoffs
I
last
get
year.
it.
Like, definitely
You
fit
had to.
this team really well last year, and that's what they were banking off of. Like, you can't get mad at the front office for the moves they made based on what happened last year, but you can be frustrated if they continue to, quote unquote, run it back, treadmill of mediocrity, if they don't make any moves at the deadline or at the end of the season and in the offseason make some bigger moves. Like, I can definitely see them having to like readjust how they view this team. But it's so fascinating because I feel like Halliburton, aside from probably tonight's game, and maybe there was one game on the road in Memphis, that he starting to play better. Like I
I
was like
agree.
confident about Halliburton playing better on the road. Like looked pretty good in Chicago. Like probably was the Pacers' best player in that game. Had some moments I think against the Nets, but it's been so long ago I forget at this point. I've done a lot since then, but I'm just gonna say like it felt like okay for the most part. Like yeah, Turner's been up and down, and you're getting Nimhard back. Siakam's taking a step back, but like Obi Toppin probably played the best basketball of his season so far the last 5 games. McConnell is stepping up how he's been playing. I think that bench unit is starting to come together with Furphy and Jarris is playing better, and they're figuring things out. And I think Siakam has been a big part of that five, that second unit five. But it's just like I don't know, man. It's just like I'm just a little bit at a loss for words when it comes to why this team is so bad. And so we're gonna take some time here, come back tomorrow and discuss, what needs to be changed. But for right now, I'm just kind of speechless. I can't give anybody a right answer that ask me all the time, like, what's going on with this team, other than they just have a consistency problem. And I think it all starts with the top of the chain, and that is not Rick Carlisle. That's Tyrese Halliburton.
It's true. One of my friends texted me, like, probably was like right after this game. It goes, "Man, what happened to Tyrese Halliburton?" And I texted him back, "I just can't do this right now." That was my answer because I didn't. It's like, where do you want me to start? It's such a heavy thing to unwrap. I just could not get into it. But it's just like, yeah, everyone's watching, and all the haters that were hating on him before, that we all came to Tyrese's aid. It's like, hey, right now, Tyrese, you got to help us. You got to back us up because we've been backing you up. And performances like tonight, look, we made the whole home road splits. We went through that. He's at home. Typically plays great at home. Tonight, there's just no excuse across the board other than they just weren't fully invested in this game. I truly think they just figured they would beat Charlotte and then have some rest, and they didn't beat Charlotte. Now they're going into that rest with the vibes of, hey, look, you better get it going right now. We talked about the schedule at the end of the month. It's brutal. This was a must-win game for the Pacers, and I know that always sounds crazy around this time. You had to have this one. And the fact that they didn't, I am very worried about this team. There isn't one thing that could change everything, but changes need to happen. I think that's a great topic for our next episode.
All right, Vajra, we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up here. So hopefully you guys, have a better Monday than the Pacers had a Sunday night and get your week going off right. And the good news is, like I said earlier, you don't have to watch this team for the next 4 days. So find something else to watch. Survivor finale part one will come out on Wednesday night if you're a big Survivor fan like myself. I'll probably be watching some Survivor reruns just to get my mind off some basketball. But I know that this upcoming week we will have Caitlin Cooper on this podcast for probably 2 episodes back to back. So, but Facci and I will continue to bring you content while there is no games, and so hopefully we can have some fun discussions. I believe on Friday we're going to be doing a top 5 most likely Pacers to be traded conversation. So that will also be an interesting conversation to have there. But with that being said, Facci, obviously the Pacers lost, but if you're glad the Pacers don't play till next Friday, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!